Well, this is exciting. If we have a small group, that I actually much prefer to get to know people individually. This is really exciting for me if this is the case. Can we pretend that the party is going to start?
Yeah, we are good to go.
Awesome. Hi, y'all. This is actually my favorite version of any presentation because we can actually have a dialogue rather than this like weird situation where I'm talking at you. Hi, maybe we can just say our names since we're a small group. I'll start. I'm Jeff Anderson. Right now I'm currently in Newark, California. My college is right across the bay in Los Altos Hills, California. I'd love to hear your names and where you're at and what you're doing.
Oh, this is Wendy Dean from Middle Tennessee, right in the middle of Tennessee. Sorry, I have to leave earlier. I'm about to teach, in so I will leave. But I'm really looking forward to Eigenvalue, talk. And Brian said we can watch the video later, so I really appreciate that.
Excited about that. Before anybody else goes, because she's leaving early, I want to go ahead and just drop something in the chat for you. I don't know what time do you have to leave, and I don't see your. Oh, there it is. Wandi Ding. Am I saying that right?
Yes. I have to leave 12:30.
Okay. That link that I've just put there is the entire platform. So every talk that I give, I create a blog post for it, and there's a lot there. There's hundreds of hours of fun to be had on that list. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I want to be able to do it before she goes. So maybe we'll do our quick introductions and then we'll jump into that.
Let me go first quickly. I work at GVSU Math, and I'm very interested in your talk about eigenvalue because currently I am working on something, and whether it's real eigenvalues or not, that matters, and whether we have orthonormal eigenvectors, eigenvector basis or not, that matters. So somehow it appeared in the application problem. So I'm trying to find something, picking up something from your talk. Thank you.
Do you know Matt Bolkins?
Oh, yes.
Are you part of the redesign of the linear algebra course?
No, I'm not. No.
Not yet.
It came up in my own research. Yeah, oh, cool. I'm not.
It's good to meet you. Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, Danny, you were up next, yeah?
Yeah, my name is Danny Lukey, and I am currently in Fargo, North Dakota, but I'll be moving to where we'll be teaching at Turtle Mountain Community College.
Yeah, community colleges.
Let's go.
Yeah. All about that. This is my favorite form of a presentation, the ones that are small and intimate. And so I just thought instead of like talking at you, we could just say our names and where we're at. And we're going to actually do a lot of interactions. I'm going to do a little bit of talking at some point because I think we have an expectation that I'm going to say something. But I'm also hoping to engage each of you as active participants if you're able. So I got Danny's name, I got Wendy's name, I got Ji Yun. Did I say that right? Ji Yun?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Can I say 반갑습니다?
Yeah, 반갑습니다. Nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks.
And then is it Milena?
Yes, this is Milena. I'm at LaGuardia Community College, CUNY in New York.
Yay! I love community colleges.
And then I teach differential equations and statistics, and I'm trying to get some more like hands-on activities there. Now that we're going back in person, I always wanted to do something like that, but I think it's more important now because, we're using so many other tools online for the remote education that, I think they're going to feel that the lack of excitement. I was doing a lot of like Mathematica, simulations and things like that. But now it's like I want them to be with me there doing things. Yeah. So I'm looking forward for the presentation.
Cool. And can I say mucho gusto?
Yes. Sí.
En nuestra casa hablamos español. Mis hijos todavía no pueden hablar en inglés. So.
Bien. Yo soy de Colombia.
Hi, y'all. All right, so we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and just show you what I've prepared for you. I have a really strong feeling that the least important part of today is what I say, and the most important part of today is what you do. One of the things that really frustrates me about many professional developments that I've been in when I was younger, I go to these a lot, is that after it's over, things tend to like just disappear and I can't follow up. And so what I just posted in there is a blog post for today's talk. It has everything that I'm going to say. I'm actually recording this locally. Simio's going to have my record on their site. I'm also going to have one on my YouTube site. This is just part of my habits. I've asked Brian if that's okay, and he said yes. So you'll see that I put a little bit, just this is a blog post. I have the abstract. Eventually, when I get my recording up, it will be here. It will be timestamped. I don't actually mind using theirs. That actually is kind of a nice thing to give them some extra traffic. You'll see that this PowerPoint presentation is a little bit old. I made it this morning, and then I was driving my son to work to school today, and I had an idea of something I wanted to add, so I have to go back and update it. If you go ahead and click on this Google Doc, and I'll go ahead and send this link in the chat so you can do that. We're going to co-create resources together. So we're actually going to do a participant warm-up where you all can put questions. Any question that you have, you can just list it as the thing goes on. I can't promise that I'm going to be able to answer all of your questions right now, but I can promise that by Monday, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm really happy that this is a small group, because sometimes when the groups are really large and I promise to answer questions, it's a lot of work. So generate as many questions you want, put them there. My hope is to get back to you by Monday of this week. And we can keep going. There's a lot of possible next steps that you can use to bring this into your classroom. We'll talk through that. Anyways, we're going to do that Google Doc in just a bit. I know Wendy, you have to get going, so you're welcome to look back at this. I'm going to keep it open for the entirety of for the foreseeable future. I have a paper that I wrote with a colleague on this work. Here is the accepted manuscript. It's a PDF form. You can download it. If you wanted to go through the DOI form, you could do that. We always appreciate when these numbers go up because it justifies. So if you have access to this, if you could do it through this, it justifies to the journal that this work is well done. However, I'm all about open access. I think it's stupid that journals have paywalls. So this is also the PDF. I have a support website for this work. So if you just click on that link, this is a lot of work. You could spend 200 hours on the site and you'd still be, I mean, maybe not 200 hours, but like a solid 50 to 100 hours and you'd still have stuff to look through. There's a lot here. So that's linked there. If you wanted to build your own McCusker machine, we're going to see this in a bit. There's whole instructions on how to do this, how to build a machine. We have videos on this. Here's all about Tracker, which we'll get into. So the point is, if you just kind of look at this and click through it, you can decide your level of engagement. We'll talk through all of that together. I don't mean to overwhelm you. My point is that the least important part of today is what I say. The most important part of today is what you get out of it and how this inspires and empowers you to do different work in your classes. And so I'm really hoping to do that. And the other thing is, yes, definitely. I do this for free. If I was a billionaire, I would do a few things. Number one, oops, I did not mean to do that. I would buy all of your teaching contracts out, like straight up. I would just pay every single one of you for less students. Like I would like a 1 to 5 teaching ratio. And then I would want you to teach only 2 quarters a year. And then the 3rd quarter, you get sabbatical to do teaching projects. I feel really strongly about that. So I can't do that, but what I can do is give you something like 7 years of work for free, so that it decreases the load that you have for implementing this. I feel very strongly about supporting other faculty members because all of us could be making money doing other things, right? And we choose to be in education because we love our students and we love this mission. And so I'm all about solidarity. Yeah, so with that, I have a lot more to say, but let's just start because I want to get to know you. So right here, we're going to start with the participant warm-up. So what I did was just put in your name and your institutions, your location, your majors. I didn't know if there were going to be students here. I didn't think so, but I figured. And then I haven't figured out how to do like XOR is exclusive OR, like maybe IOR. So inclusive OR titles, if you wanted to put in there, a dream that you have and a favorite quote. And if you just go ahead and copy this, what's nice about this is that, do you see how this shows up over here? This is Google Docs. My students are teaching me how to do this. If you bold your name, it will show up over in this page. So I was trying to give you a chance by just like copy. Yeah, there you go. And then just paste and put it down. And we'll take maybe 4 to 6 minutes to just kind of write a little bit. And I'm going to be reading as you're writing just to get to know you a little bit. Lilian, you're making me laugh right now. I love that. I'm reading your work as you're doing it, and I'm putting little comments on the side. It's one of the fun things about Google. These are awesome quotes. We'll get into the presentation in a bit, but I think it's so powerful to see each other and see all the power and strength that we have together. All right, maybe let's take like 2 more minutes. Hopefully you have a chance to read other folks, and feel free to comment on each other. I'm trying to comment on everybody if I can. Ji Young, I think she might have, is it what happens, happens, what doesn't, doesn't?
Yeah, it's a sort of a translation, my own translation. So please go ahead and fix it. Thank you.
I absolutely love that quote. I feel like I want to get a tattoo right now.
Funny, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Really cool. Maybe we'll kind of wrap up. You're welcome to keep commenting. I'm going to keep this up so this can be a document. One of the things that I feel really strongly about is solidarity in action. This project is complex enough that if you try to do it alone, that's really hard. But if there's a whole group of us working on it together, I think we can make a lot of progress. And when we get stuck, we can actually refer back to each other as resources. I will be I will give you as much energy and attention as I can, but I can't solve all problems if you're serious about using this work. And so my hope is that we come together and create a community of practice. And this document is the first example of that. But you know, it's not up to me, it's up to what we do together. And so I just wanted to give us a chance to get to know each other a little bit. So with that, if it's okay, I might start the formal presentation. There's some stuff at the end that I want to come back to. So we're going to talk about making eigenvalues resonate. You now have access to the presentation homepage. You can visit that at any time. It will be up for the rest of my life, which I hope is a long time. We've just done the warm-up. I wanted to give a little bit of context for this work, and I love quotes. I'm an avid reader, and so I'm just going to share some quotes that kind of catch my mind when I'm thinking about this work. So this comes from a book called Ungrading. This is a very beautiful book. It's an advanced subject, though. This took me like 4 or 5 years of reading to get to. I don't think I would have been ready for it for my first dive in. But the quote goes like this. Roger Schenck has often said, there are only 2 things wrong with education, what we teach and how we teach it. Getting rid of grades is an important part of fixing the how, but it's important not to lose sight of the what. So I'm going to be really clear and say that we're going to talk a lot about what. At the end of the talk, I'll talk a little bit about how. I have other talks on my YouTube site, and I have a bunch of resources to think about how. and we'll go through that, but this is really focused on the what. What do we do in our classrooms, and what are we working with students to learn? So with that, feel free, as I'm going, like, feel free to add any questions and comments. I'm doing a lot right now to give this presentation, but like, I do plan to read every one of your questions and concerns and address those before Monday of next week. So one of the things that I think a lot about with students is that I want to give students authentic visions into, or experiences, I suppose, into mathematical modeling, and particularly the entire process. So one thing that I think a lot about is having students be able to experience real world problems and experience what it means to find a meaningful solution to those problems. And I have a simple definition for a real world problem. It is anything a student can measure in their life. So if they can measure it and they can talk about it, then it's a real world problem. Some of those problems have easy solutions, like how tall am I? That's an easy solution. Some of those problems are not so easy to solve. And one of the things that's really interesting is students aren't used to thinking about measuring stuff in their world and all the stuff that they can do to measure. A good mathematical problem, the connection between real world problems and the meaningful solution has a prohibited obstacle. So it's not easy to make the connection between those two. And that's where mathematicians make our money, right? We get our paycheck from industry or governments or sometimes academia for making connections that are very, very hard to make. And so I like to coach students through the process that if you can't go from a real world problem to a solution, then what we do is we mathematize that problem and go over to the ideal model, right? And then this is where most math classes sit. So we do, once we have the ideal model, we use math to do analysis and we get an ideal solution. And then we do some critical thinking to think about the connection between the ideal solution and the meaningful solution. And if it's a good model, we have to do this a lot before we get there. And the thing that really bothers me about almost every math class I ever took is that it only focused on this piece of the puzzle. It only focused on mathematical analysis, and it left the most interesting parts of this process blind to the user. And it wasn't until like my 4th year of my PhD process that I was like, oh, that's what we were doing. And I think this is a crime because a lot of people are paying a lot of money to get college education. And I think we can do this 1st and 2nd year undergraduate to contextualize the entire education process. And in fact, I have been doing this for about 8 years in my classes. And we've, some of my students and I have done some really amazing work. I've had students that use these type of things to get hired at local engineering firms. There's some stories on my YouTube site if you wanted to see this. But the point of the matter is, when I'm thinking about this project that I'm about to propose, this project is literally the entire process and iterative design. And students, I expect my students to be responsible for all of that. And we'll kind of talk through that process. So again, this is the what of what we're doing in the classroom, right? So the main focus of this is eigenvalue modeling, but I do have to be honest with you that for you, those of you that are teaching ODEs, this apparatus that you see behind me functions as an ODE, you know, the forced harmonic oscillator. I'm working with some engineers right now to see if we can get a damper. So like a, what is it, a dash pod or a dap shot? I always forget which one it is. Is it dash pod?
Dash pod, yeah.
Yeah, so the dash pod, I want an actual like version of this where you can get a controllable B. So if you do M U double dot plus B U dot plus KU, right now this thing has a 0 B factor. It's not quite 0, but like the time scale is long enough that we can pretend it's 0 for functional processes. But like I would really love to design a process by which we can attach something to that and get a dash pod that is programmable. So you like turn a knob and it increases the resistance. I'm working with an engineer right now and a physicist who think they can do it with eddy currents, but that's not something that I can do right now. That will probably be another 5 years before that comes to fruition. But the point of the matter is like that, this whole thing is cost, no joke, this cost me about $120. I built it myself. I'm not a trained physicist. I have no, very, very little experience in a lab. But I teamed up with a physicist, an experimental physicist, and I asked him some simple questions like, I want to do eigenvalue analysis and I want to do it for very cheap because I'm at a community college, and I want it to be measurable, and I want it to be portable, and I want it to be shareable, and I want to be able to build it myself. And the two of us worked for about 3.5 years to come up with this. So he came up with the design. The design is quite simple. We just build a frame. We hang wires down from this frame. There's a little platform. We put weights on it. We attach a spring. Notice that if you don't attach the spring, these are single pendulums and the data acquisition thing still holds. So up here is a camera pointed down there. You see this, that is a camera right here. It's pointed 90 degrees down. On the bottom of this thing, it's hard to see, but on the bottom, there's actually a measuring tape, and the measuring tape allows us to do distance, which is really cool. So once this thing is built, you could build this in like a week if you had all the supplies, and I would recommend that none of you build it. So one of the things that I've tried to do in this project is allow you to ease your way into it. So later in this talk, you'll see that I have a lot of online resources so that you can use the videos that I create for yourself. So you can do the entire modeling process without using this. Eventually, though, I think if you're going to systematize this and bring it into your class, there's nothing like being able to touch something for students. And what you could do is use an independent study to have students build it. You could probably get your departments to pay for the supplies. We have an entire supplies list on stock. To be honest with you, I just bought this out of pocket. I have this trick where I give my wife like a 30-minute massage and she's feeling really, really good. And she wants me to keep going, and then I'll stop and I'll say, hey, baby, can I spend $120 on math stuff? And she'll be like, yes, anything. And then I finish the massage, right? And so I go out and I get the stuff, and then she gets her massage and everything's all good. And the reason I did that is I did not want to have to wait for the department to like take 7 months to tell me that they can spend $120. It's easy, it's fast, etc. So anyways, you could have students build this. You don't have to do that to use this material. I've posted everything that you would need to run the entire modeling process online. This is really the last part of this process so that students can get their hands wet, so to speak. There's nothing like attaching springs to this and then asking them to find the fundamental modes. Like, students go crazy for this. It's pretty cool, right? Like it's a pretty amazing thing to have eigenvalues come alive. One thing that I'll say is right now I don't have this set up. It is possible to get so this is a digital camera. This is the most expensive part of the whole process. But I could imagine quite easily using like thread, tela, as we would say it, like tela, or even floss. Like you could just hang floss down here so that a cell phone just sits on the floss, right? And like just sits above. This is kind of fancy because I do YouTube stuff separately. So right now I have a digital camera, but like there's an attachment to the tripod that I can swap out so that it holds a phone. And the reason that this is useful is that any student that has a cell phone that takes videos has a mechanism by which they can take eigenvalue videos. It doesn't have to be expensive. I definitely think that I could take some floss, take 2 things of floss, make it so that the cell phone sits directly perpendicular. And now all of a sudden you've got a mechanism by which you're taking eigenvalue videos. I'm all about cheap. Like, I love to do really fun stuff for like pennies on the dollar. So the whole project is designed to do that, right? So this is what we call the measurement process. So the real world problem, and it does take a while to get students into the real world problem, right? Because this real world problem is really to measure the location of the center of mass during motion. And the way that this works is, let's see, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Let me get to that site so you can see this, and then I'll show you the videos, and then we'll talk about data acquisition. So here we go. And then what we'll do, what I'm going to show you right now is where you can get what I'm about to show you. So here is the Google Doc we've worked on. There's the PowerPoint presentation I need to update. Here's the paper. And then this website, I'll go ahead and click on it. And then the other thing that I'll do is I'll send this in the chat so that you have it. Milena, would you mind posting that in the Google Doc also so that I can refer back to that question? I can do that real quick.
I'll do it. No worries.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so what's nice about this is that we actually had 2 of these, and we would set them up in separate places in the room, and then the students would actually be taking videos separately. We ended up, when I've used this, I actually stopped using it recently in the last 3 years because I've been developing another one like this. We just submitted for publication, so that should be out in the next probably 6 to 9 months. And that's a linear systems one, so that's specifically linear algebra. When we did this, though, students really struggled. So one of the things that I'll be honest with you, this is the what, and I think this is a fantastic activity. How to bring this in the class, I would love to work with others. I know how I did it, and I know how I would refine it, but there's a bunch of problems to be solved, which is why I want to start asking questions and thinking about challenges, because I think as a team, if we were really interested in implementing this, we could do some really fun work together. I have about 5 quarters worth of experience doing this with students. So I have a lot of ideas and things that failed that I can share, but I can guarantee you that I have not thought about all challenges. And so the short answer to your question is, we had students take videos, they produced MP4 files, and then we'll talk about how to transform those MP4 files into measurements. So the reason I wanted to show you this website, you can read everything here for you. It's open access. I want it to be open access for the rest of my life. There's a nice video from my co-author, a guy named Mike McCusker. I call this thing a McCusker machine because McCusker made it. So that's what I call it, it's a McCusker machine. He always wants to call it a couple pendulum machine. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, Mike. This is an example. It takes about 10 minutes to set up. And in this video, I show that. I actually just set the thing up from ground, because some people have said, oh my God, that looks like it's going to take so long. And I'm like, it really doesn't. Like, as long as you have the stuff close, it's not hard to set up and take down. There's a little bit about measuring spring constant. So when you actually have the spring set up, how do you measure it? And we use like literally quarters or sand so that we didn't have to spend money on it. And then these are actually real videos. So if you click on this thing, normal mode 1 of this system is when the thing is symmetric, right? Not sure what's going on with that. Let's see. Were they getting mad at me? Can I just download this, please? Okay, so I might need to upload this. Let's try that. Okay, so what's cool about this is an actual, I call these Eigenvalue Experiments. So it's that same thing in normal mode. I can tell you there's a lot of secrets to get this thing in a good normal mode. That took a lot of work. Looks like it's simple, but like getting this thing in a pure eigen mode took me like 3 weeks of practice, and I was doing it like 2 or 3 times a week. So there's some tricks associated with that, but you can kind of see this, right? So this is the raw data that we use. And what we tell students is like, go ahead and draw this, right? And you can see at the bottom of this thing, do you see that distance here? And so the idea is that students will do these experiments before we ever start talking about theory, and we'll start to develop what the real world problem is. Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And it takes a few weeks. This reminds me of Dan Mayer, right? If math is the medicine, what's the headache? And this gives students a real headache, because they're like, can you just tell me what I need to do? And I'm like, no, I cannot. You're going to tell me what you're trying to model on here, and we're going to develop that model, because otherwise what happens is we're taking that intellectual discovery away from them. And what's really nice about that is that these tend to be very hard to develop. Like, it takes some time to think about. And then to actually mathematize it takes a lot more time. So by the time we get to the mathematical analysis, students are like hungry for how to analyze this thing to get a meaningful solution, because they've constructed the problem for themselves, right? So the point is that you can download all of those. You can do the normal mode and the mixed mode. They're all there for you. And that allows you to be able to avoid building these things, and yet still you can do the modeling activity, right? So those are all there. We have McCusker's machine and we have Anderson's machine. Anderson's is mine, McCusker is my co-author. You have all MP4 files. There's something called Tracker. So what's really interesting about this, if you just type in Tracker software, remember I'm all about free shit. Sorry, I grew up in a working class family, and I think I learned my first cuss word when I was like 3. I'm all about free stuff. So physics software. This is an open source software written by a community college instructor, which I really love. I'll go and drop this here. And what's crazy about Tracker is you can put that video into Tracker and get position data out. And the position data, my physicist that's on this says it's probably like 1/2 times 10 to the 3rd accurate, because it's actually doing it on pixels. So I don't know if you saw that when we were looking at this, that at the bottom, there's these 2 little marks right there. See those little marks? Yeah. That's exactly 10 centimeters apart on the thing. And so what I do in Tracker is I actually just like calibrate the thing. And what's cool about this is, you know, instead of me presenting this live, you can just literally click on this video. Welcome back. In this video, can you hear a brief introduction? Can you hear that?
Yep. Maybe more volume.
Okay, let's on how to use Tracker software to collect position data from our mass spring chain. In this introduction, we assume that we have already filmed an eigenvalue experiment using our apparatus, and that we have an MP4 file ready to be imported into Tracker.
Let's begin by opening Tracker. In my case, I look in the Applications directory, scroll down, find Tracker, and open. I'm now in the Welcome window on Tracker software. Next step is to import our Eigenvideo into Tracker. To do so, I go to File, scroll down to Import, find the file that I want, and import it. This import will likely take some time. In this video, I sped up the process so that I don't put you to sleep. On the bottom of our display, we see a playhead as well as a timeline. Under that timeline, we see two arrows. The arrow on the left indicates the first frame of the video that I plan to analyze. The arrow on the right indicates the last frame of the video. I can move these around to set my boundary conditions. Next, I'm going to indicate to Tracker the X and Y axis. To do so, I click on the axis button and I set the origin, the x-axis, and the orientation of the x-axis so that it aligns through the center of masses in my video. I recommend you take some time to make sure that x-axis goes through the center of masses. You can test to see if it's oriented well by watching a few periods of the mass's motion. Because Tracker uses image processing algorithms to create position data by analyzing individual pixels in our video, we need to calibrate the software and indicate a reference length from which all other distances will be calculated. To do so, I'm going to zoom in to find the black marks, which are exactly 10 centimeters apart. Next, let's create a new calibration stick. Here we align the left point on this calibration stick with the left black mark in our video, and the right point with the right black mark. We then tell Tracker that we'd like to interpret the distance between these pixels as 0.1 meters or 10 centimeters. Tracker will track all distances in this video with reference to this calibration stick. Next, we're going to indicate which point we would like to track in our video. To do so, I create a new point mass, click on the mass name, and scroll down to Auto Tracker. I then indicate the center of mass, the exact point in this image that I'm going to track. From this point, I manipulate Tracker's search region to get the best data from this video. You can learn a lot more about how Tracker works and best practices when using Auto Tracker from Douglas Brown's tutorial on using Tracker software. Once we set our search region, we can now search, and Tracker will analyze the movement of our specific point frame by frame.
I mean,
In
just
this analysis, Tracker is assigning
amazing, right?
a time for each frame, an X position, and a Y position that you see on the screen. Moreover, Tracker can be used to track X velocity, Y velocity, X Y acceleration, and many other variables. Once we're done with this process, we can then stop our Auto Tracker and export our data as an Excel spreadsheet. To do so, we go up to File, Export
I have.
Data File, and then we can save it as a comma-separated variable, or CSV file for short. We can title this file anything we would like, save it to our folder, and open it in Excel, MATLAB, OpenOffice, or any other software that allows us to read this. This file can now be manipulated in any way we'd like. We can change the titles, delete data, or manipulate any of the numeric values. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay, so I just want to say, like, God bless Mike and all y'all. This is what teachers deserve, right? And I don't want any of your students or you to have to pay a cent for this. You should get it for free. That's why it's up there, right? I feel very strongly about the fact that really good education should be open access, period. This does take a lot of work, but luckily, if I was a billionaire, I'd do it for free. I do have to pay rent. Like, I'm working on it. So what I wanted to share just real quick, you can watch that video anytime, it's up there. The other thing that I wanted to show you is not only did I give you access to that video here, but like you can download Tracker software right here on our website. And then these are 3 tutorials that are worth watching if you're serious about doing this. So you can figure out how to use Tracker yourself. And because you have access to all the videos, you can run this on your own. I also give you access to the McCusker apparatus details and mine as well. So you can kind of read through this. It's going to take you a few minutes to read, but it's all there for you. I think I also include analysis. So the nice thing is what we've just done, if we go back to our slide here, right? We've allowed students to do a real world problem, and we've actually got a meaningful solution to that problem. But what students will notice is, oh my God, this is not easy. Like this took a ton of work, right? And so once we make those connections, first they have to discover what the problem is. Second, they've got to come up with a meaningful solution, which is the location of the center of mass at any time. Then we go through the process of mathematization. And I kind of have a few things. This is a playlist that I finished a few years ago. Let's see, can I watch it on YouTube? I always forget about this. What do I do? How do I watch this thing on YouTube? There we go. So this playlist is great for direct instruction. It has everything a student needs. It's probably like 4 hours long. It's all videos that are available for you. If I could, I would play them without advertisements, but YouTube doesn't give me the option to do that. I haven't made a penny on any of my stuff. In fact, it cost me $50,000 over like 15 years to make these videos, and I don't expect revenue to come in from myself. When I do make revenues, I'm going to invest it back into students and back into projects like this. So just for the record, like some people are like, why are you using YouTube? You're trying to sell ads? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I would prefer not to have any ads. I hate advertising. I just get really upset about that. But YouTube doesn't give the chance. So as my numbers go up, and if I do make revenue, I will sink it back into these projects because I want students to have that, right? I cover my own financial stuff from my work, and this is all the stuff that I do like this is designed for student thriving and success. So anyways, the reason I wanted to show you this is you can assign these videos to your students as prerequisite. One of the things we'll talk about soon is it's not feasible to lecture and have students do lab work. So most math stuff is based on lecture and then they go home. But when you're using stuff like this, if you're talking in class, they're not going to have access to that. And so there's a process by which we can flip the classroom. But to do that, you need good direct instruction. So the crazy thing is these videos, you can find those down here. There's 2 eigenvalue playlists that are just amazing. Not only these eigenvalue playlists, there's also stuff on Pendulum. So I do a lot with pendulums. Like I think really critically about it. At some point, I'm going to upload onto Mathematica. Stupid ads, God, I hate ads. So at one point I created this really nice Mathematica. There it is. So I have like really nice Mathematica visualizations to help students through this. You can actually see the different processes, and I'll upload these. I mean, if you need them, you can. I haven't figured out, our school hasn't paid for our Mathematica license. But like this is a beautiful demonstration of the dynamics of the pendulum, and we talk about every single thing. We slow it down in these videos. And what's cool about that is they actually derive every differential equation from for the pendulum from first principles. And then once we have those derivations, we derive the eigenvalue problem, which is the couple problem, and then we solve the thing, right? And that's all done in those videos. Like if you look at this thing, this is really good stuff. I've never seen, if I had seen it in a textbook, I wouldn't have done it. I've never seen a single textbook that exists on Earth that covers this stuff at this depth. You can get some from physics stuff, you can get some from math stuff, you can get some from engineering stuff. And what I did is I actually just combined all of them together in this real world situation to give the students everything that they need to be able to do the mathematical analysis on this problem and make intelligent statements about the ideal solution to these problems and how that relates to the underlying physical phenomenon. So that's all there for you. You are welcome to use it in your classes. I would love to know if it's something you're going to do. I have a vested interest in getting students access to this, and I want to support you. So you can do it in the blind if you want. You can just use the stuff and never tell me. But if you tell me, then I can be of service to you. I have a lot of experience using this stuff, and your feedback is really valuable to me, because one of the things that I want to do is help other teachers thrive in their classes, and that's not easy to do. And so I'm at your service, within the context of the fact that I do this in my waking hours, right? So that's all there for you. And the reason I wanted to tell you this is at the end of this process, students get to the place where they've actually solved the differential equation. So we actually go through the entire process of solving the differential equation. We get both eigenvectors. This is another Mathematica notebook. Do you see this one? This one's pretty cool. You can mess around with the parameters. You can mess around with M1 and M2. You can mess around with the initial position and the K, and it will actually give you the ideal solution as a visual, right? And so what's crazy about this is once students have the idea, so we've gotten the real world problem, we've done the mathematization, so they actually derived all the equations for themselves, then we solve the darn thing, we get an ideal solution. And then kind of the upshot of all this work is that students then put their stuff in Excel and they compare their solutions to the solutions of to the actual data that we generate. And this is where things get fun. And I know what you're going to say, Jeff, they've been fun the whole time. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Right? So this is pretty amazing. I've had students generate, this is not student data. This is Mike and I's data. This is what we used in our paper when we wrote it. But like I've had students generate in their own eigenvalue experience this. So the red is the measured displacement and the black is the modeled displacement. So they go through the entire process and they model it. And what's fun is this takes like 5 weeks or like 4 weeks because I can't get them to line up. And like, you know, eventually I remember one student, there was a negative missing and they took like 3 weeks to find it. And they were like upset with me. They're like, why didn't you just tell me? And I'm like, welcome to mathematical modeling. like you just got a really good, what it looks like to do this stuff. And it's not clean and it's not easy and it takes a lot of thought and you got to pay attention and et cetera, et cetera. And that's the point, right? That we integrate in a real world context, what's happening here, what's happening in front of them into the curriculum that they're learning in their classes to give them a real intellectual need. And the satisfaction, I've had students that became applied math majors. So I had a guy that moved from physics to applied math. I've had students that like went on to do other projects like this. I have a bunch of stories about what this has meant to the students that I've worked with on this project, because this stuff comes alive for them, right? It's just an amazing thing. And I have to be honest and say that this project I chose strategically. So it ends up that eigenvalues and eigenvectors are really important. Like they show up all over the place. I have a set of videos on this process that you're welcome to take a look at. So if you go down to the bottom of this here, I don't know why this video doesn't have like 1 million views. And I think it's because nobody expects anything out of a community college, which I am looking to change. This video, I guess it's the first one here. The first video here answers the question, what are eigenvalues and why are they useful? And it also answers the question, why is mass spring systems so important? This took me about 4 years of research to create the content of this video, and it sampled a bunch of engineering, physics, and applied math textbooks. It's a good one. There's a lot there, and it shows why this example is so important and how powerful this example can be for students. So that's kind of the what. I want to be quiet in just a minute because I think we go to 15 and I want to give a few minutes to write. So what I just talked about was the what. How do I just open this one? Do you remember this? Play from current slide. So I have to be honest with you and say the what is half the battle. Really, it's like 40% of the battle. For you all, you have to spend a little bit of time, but like you all have this, right? This took me like 7 years of work. I usually work on this stuff between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. before my kids wake up, all unfunded, right? It's been pretty amazing. The how is really interesting. So these are some samples of how I do this work. I used all flipped learning, so I don't lecture at students. They do all the stuff at home, watching videos, and then they come to class, and that's where we do labs. So the entire class period is on lab work on applied projects like this one. This is just one of 2. In the coming years, I have another 4 like this that I'm working on developing. You just pay attention. You can track me. I'm online. You'll see my publications as I get them. They collaborate in small groups. So usually groups of 4 do this type of modeling. So they actually have to compare and contrast, and they're all producing reports like this. I use ungrading, so I refuse to assign grades in my classes. In fact, my current process is that the entire class is all feedback and no grades until the last day. And on the last day, the students tell me what grades they want, and those are the ones that I assign in my book. In fact, I tell my students, I want all of you to assign yourself A's. I have a lot to say about how harmful grades can be and how much they get in the way of this. That process itself took me about 10 years of reading. So it's going to be weird for most of you. If you want to read about ungrading, I have entire blog posts on that. I have a lot to say about that process. There's also some great books on that subject that are worth reading. I also have a heavy focus on metacognition in my class. So I always like to tell my students I want to teach them to be professional learners, people that can learn anything by themselves. And then because I don't lecture, I actually have one-on-one conferences with students every single week where we just spend the entire time talking about their progress, brainstorming their challenges and getting them help, right? So this is the how. Our talk today is not about how, but I want to show you some of the work that's possible here and say that you're not alone. The last thing I'm going to say, and then we'll do some writing, is that that's not the one I want. I feel old right now. Tell me I'm not old. Tell me I'm still young. A little bit old. There on our Google Doc today, so if we go back to the Google Doc for today's presentation, at the bottom, I put some things that you could do, because it is often overwhelming to look at this and think like, what do I do next? So I tried to order these in from least to most intense. So least intense is just visit that homepage and read it, download the paper if you'd like it, print and store for retrieval, so save it in a space that's special, and then you can read that paper if you'd like. Everything I just said is in that paper. There's some playlists that you can watch through. If you're ever having a hard time sleeping, you put one of those on and you'll be out in like 2 minutes, guaranteed, right? And then here's the software. And then at the end here, I have a lot about redesigning classrooms. So this is all about the what, and then this is all about the how. So I have a lot to say. These are all my blog posts right here about what I think about learning. And then here's a lot about active learning and really flipping the idea of lecturing at students. And then there's a ton about grading. If you were to do this, I would imagine this is about 4 to 8 years of reading. But at the end of that 4 to 8 years, if you were to combine that with stuff like this, you would have done this at least twice as fast as I have. So I'm going to stop there. I do have a final kind of a journal entry that I had wanted to have you all do. You can do this after the fact, though. One of the really nice things about this is that I'm trying to create a community, right? So that you all aren't alone. I plan to go back and read this. I have another talk today and then some other stuff going on, but over the weekend, I plan to go back and read your responses. And specifically, I think, remember, what's least important about this meeting is what I've just said. In fact, I don't even think what I've said is important. Honestly, what I think is important is what you all do. And these are designed to get you thinking about what you want to do next, and also to get you united with other people who can support your progress. If you want to use this material, it's all there for you. And I think the hard part is making progress, because we all have day jobs, right? And the idea that I have is that if we can kind of act in solidarity together, then you're not alone. So I'll shut up. Any questions, concerns, or comments you can post, and you can also audible those. Thank you so much for your attention today. So feel free to ask or talk.
So I just wanted to say thank you. I always had in mind a project that I wanted to do, but I contacted the people of the computer science department to see if we could create a software like the one you just showed about Tracker. And it's, the triple pendulum that appears in Iron Man, the movie. So I wanted to create one like that and then bring it to class and kind of like measure the different, that centers of mass of the bars, and then have the students model that. So, I hope we can, based on the work you've done, I feel now that I can do that project with the students. So thank you for sharing all those resources.
So happy to support you. I wish I could give you I don't know, 2 million a year to do what you're doing and decrease the number of students you have. I think, I always get upset with folks that talk about education. They're always like, teachers, do better in your jobs. You want a really good way to have education? Have a 1 to 5 teacher to student ratio. You want amazing educational outcomes, and give every single one of us spring quarter off so that we're with students 6 months of the year, and 6 months a year we get to work on projects like this. That's how you get good educational outcomes, right? And I just want to say thank you for all the work you're doing. I wish I could send you money. I'm not a rich man, so.
But resources is good enough, so thank you. I have more questions if anybody.
Yeah, holler. I mean, fill the space.
So, how many students do you have in your class?
We usually have so when I was doing this activity, I had 35. Since then, the union has renegotiated to 40. Normally by week 2, which is what we call census date. So if students drop before week 2, they don't get charged, but if they drop after. Normally in a class like this, the intensity is like 32 students that are actually in census date. And that's, if you divide those into groups of 4, that's about 8 groups. So that's four groups per day.
Right. And then how many, like if you teach differential equations, how many sections do you have? Or you or the department offers every?
Oh yeah, so this one, I haven't taught differential equations yet because I decided in 2009 that I was going to revolutionize linear algebra education, and that's what I'm working on.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have about 7 sections of linear algebra. We probably have something similar to differential equations. We're a big community college. We have a lot of, yeah. And then so each teacher, I teach 3 sections a quarter, so 9 sections a year. If I was a semester, I would teach 5 semester classes and then probably 4.
Okay. I was just thinking about, how to figure it out to organize it. And then, I always notice that the students who are taking differential equations, they're either taking or are going to take linear algebra, or they're taking or are going to take physics. So it's like if there was a way to collaborate so the load can be shared across departments and instructors, like a learning community kind of thing,
Can I share a really fun trick that I've been using for a few years? So this is a process. It's going to, if your life is anything like my life, this is going to take multiple years to do well. And what I've done is the first 3 or 4 years that I'm working on this, I specifically target really motivated students who learn deeply. I don't care about grades. At this point, I'm sick of grades, but people that are like really motivated and learn deeply, after they take my class, like week 6 of the 12-week quarter, I start to say like, hey, would you be interested in independent study? Hey, would you want to do this? And then their independent study, I give them at least an hour or 2 hours of mentoring per week. And then they're actually figuring all this stuff out. And I actually onboard them into the process of saying, we're going to work as an instructional team. I'm going to give you, so I actually have them write theses, the equivalent of theses, right? They're actually writing stuff so that they can take it. So they're actually getting educational experiences that are very, very valuable. But in return, they're getting to guide my work. They're actually telling me what I would need to do to bring it in the classroom. They're helping me build stuff, et cetera. And so I usually run about 1 or 2 independent studies per quarter. And that's actually how I did this the first like 7 times. So by the time I get into the classroom, I've had, 7 generations of independent study students work on this process and really think with me as part of my team on what they would need to do to be able to do this for an introductory course, right? Because I target the early ones of people who've already finished, I don't have to worry about the mathematical background. They've already got the mathematical background. And so we can focus on other details. And so that's one trick that I've used to like decrease the cognitive load in the early stages and then keep making continual progress so that I can keep this dream alive. Like the ultimate dream is to bring it to all students, but by cutting it up into easier projects, that way, by the time I'm ready to launch it, I've had multiple students kind of work out the kinks with me, right?
Okay, I get it. So, and have you tried to have demonstrations where the students that are working with you kind of like visit the classroom in other sections?
Yeah. So you're getting into, I don't know if I should say this out loud because I don't want any of my administrators to watch this. Although at this point I bark pretty loudly. So come at me, administrators. Like I do so much for our college. I freaking bleed for our college, right? So one of the things that I do actually, I've found that I target those students, not only their independent studies, but they become tutors in my next class. So they'll actually sit in the classes and like coach people and teach them, which is really interesting. And they get credit for that. And one of the things that I always try to do is I give them really good, I can't pay them. We don't have enough money to pay them. So I can't give them money for their time, which I should be doing. But what I do instead is give them really good mentorship and guidance. So they become part of my learning family and I invest wholeheartedly in them. So I actually think really deeply about where they're going next, what skills can I have them build, et cetera. And in return, they actually become mentors in the classroom. And so they actually share a lot of this stuff with other students. And then what's cool is we've actually had them go present at conferences. My students are, I'm here in this room because of students actually, like they're like, you need to publicize your stuff. And I'm like, I'm busy, I have other stuff doing. And they're like, you need to get this stuff out there for other teachers. So I'm not so worried about national conferences, but you could do that, like any poster session and any, like this work is good enough, I think, when students do it, that you could send students out. The more people work on this project, the better it's going to get, right? And so students
Yeah.
are a great way to, yeah. So
Yeah, we do competitions of research of students at LaGuardia for like in science and engineering. So there is like a space if we would like to do it, like I like to do it in that way. So it's great to hear that it works well. And I'm sure that they use the experience and letters of reference and all that so they can apply for transfer or for like work and etc. right?
Oh, big time. Yeah, I've had students get jobs from this process. Like they literally talked about it in their job interview and made money on it, scholarship money. Like I try to get them paid. I just can't pay them salary money while they're
Right. Yeah.
Jeff, I have to tell you how much I learned from you. It's so inspiring. And it sounds like you have a very good system, which is a great example of sustainability. So I expect to continue to learn from your materials. Thank you so much for your teaching today.
I'm really happy to meet you. I hope that it's all there for you. Please let me know how I can serve you. Please let me know how you, there's more too. Pay attention to my stuff. Every time I come up with a project, we have a really good one on linear systems coming up.
I'm going to be really knowing myself like one at a time, little bit. You have so vast things accumulated, like your, I don't know, blood and sweat. Anyway, thank you so much. It was inspiring.
I should probably shut up because it's 11:15. I feel so
Thank you
blessed
so
to have your
much.
attention. Please, let's stay in contact. You're not alone.
Yeah,
so much.
I'll drop an email or something. Thank you. Bye.
Kevin, you still in the room?
Hi.
Yes,
Can
I am.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. This is EMP Ma. Professor Kurt Bryan can't get in. He said he clicked and Zoom won't let him in. Is everything okay?
Let me send him the direct link. I know I saw him in one of the other Zoom rooms earlier.
I'm going to take off. Thank you for your attention. For those of you that were in my talk, I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye.